EA Sports. It's in the game. I've known my best friend Kwan Ho for about 20 years. We've been to elementary, middle, and high school together. We took a course together in university. We've lived together. He interviewed me for a job at one point. I brought him on as a consultant at my work. The only thing we really have left to do is either marry each other or at least, best man at our weddings. Suffice it to say, knowing somebody for that long, you wind up spending a lot of time and money on them. And having recently made a rather absurd expenditure in honor of that friendship, I just thought I'd tell that story tonight. So back in 2007, I made the gamble, which turned out to be the wrong one, to drop out of my studies at the University of Toronto and to pursue a life of excitement, magic, adventure in Ottawa. Admittedly, there was a girl involved in the decision to move to Ottawa, but just as much, it was the opportunity to, for the first and perhaps only time in my life, live with my best friend. There was an extra room in the house, and so I wound up moving in with him and a couple of other school friends. And all in all, the arrangements there were pretty good. We lived very different lives. They were in school. I was depressed and angry and staring at emails, waiting for them to come in to get a job. It was, like I said, a bad gamble that I took. But there were certain house rules that we established very early on that kept a very good environment for us. I'll just share the first three of those rules. Number one, that for any game of Mario Kart 64, it's necessary for a full 4-player commitment to a full 16-course Grand Prix for an evening's entertainment of about 46 minutes, 23 seconds, not that we calculated. Rule number 2, when playing Bases Loaded 3 on the original NES, every player on the field has a personality that has developed over time, and you need to remember the narrative thread each time you pick up the game. And rule number 3, to which Kwan Ho and I were the strongest adherents, was the belief that of all the various manifestations of that art form known as video games, that the grandest, perhaps the greatest video game of all time, was EA Sports published NHL 99 for the Nintendo 64. The rivalries were timeless. His Vancouver Canucks versus my Detroit Red Wings. Pavel Bure versus Steve Yzerman. Gar Snow, Chris Osgood. Brandon Convery, Doug Brown, I don't know. But what it meant was that amongst our life here sharing at this house, we had one night a week set aside where we'd sit down for about an hour, crack some beers open, and play a few games of digital hockey and, talk about our lives. A year went by, I decided to get my life back together, moved out to my own apartment, enrolled in Ottawa at Carleton University, and this begat 2 first major expenditures in this relationship that I had with my best friend. The first, of course, was a purchase of an N64 with NHL 99, which set me only back $15, if you can believe it, just at the local used video game store for both the system and the game. And also, in my absolute adherence to this idea of having the full quartet of school, elementary through university, we agreed to take a course together. Unfortunately, the only course we wound up being able to take together was something that I didn't need for my degree. It was a second-year French course, but I don't really regret the $600 I blew on that because it gave us that opportunity to relive the childhood stupidity and disrespectfulness that we had cultivated over many years. My mom's actually here tonight, so she might disagree with that decision. But now, one thing I've noticed about relationships, friendships in general, is that if you remove the element of sex or the promise of sex from the relationship, it becomes very difficult to maintain a regular commitment to that other person. As much as you may love him, and I do love my best friend for sure, and as much as you may phone, text, hang out, it's hard to see each other on a regular basis. It's not a hand to hold, a shoulder to cry on, a person to take back home to parents or to bed. But, and it sounds ridiculous to say this tonight, but this video game, NHL 99, actually very much managed to fill that gap in our friendship. So first we take off, no. No, we developed this routine. So on a weekly basis, we would set together an evening and we'd get together. And it very quickly became clear that this was just a pretext and a justification for us to hang out on a regular basis and get to know each other in a way that we never really had before. All that stuff we'd sort of danced around as selling teenagers, we could sit down for an evening, start a conversation. Oh, that girl, pick up again a week later on that or some other philosophical topic, pick up again, keep getting to know each other over the course of the year. Admittedly, a lot of those conversations went like this. Yeah, I don't know what this course, what the fuck was that? How did that goal go in? I do not understand that glitch. Is Pavel Bure in the penalty box and also on the ice celebrating a goal? This game is broken. That game is a ridiculously broken game. I think that really added to the charm to it and why we latched onto it so well. No two games of NHL 99 will ever be alike, and the actual rules of hockey will change each time. But look, I realize at this point that it is a little embarrassing to talk about a video game as a glue holding a friendship together. We also played chess. No. But the truth is that I think guys do this. We have this sort of problem maybe where we can't, get at the more interesting stuff. And we always need some sort of protective layer here before we can get to down here. So, if it's not video games, it's sports, it's misogyny, it's something like that. So, you start off talking about tits and then you talk about the woman you're in love with. And that did it. We got to know each other extremely well in a way that really built our friendship, and we were able to every time we sat down pick up where we'd left off, which circles me back around to tonight's theme and the story, which is just that just this past September he enrolled in a master's program out west in BC. And although he did take a chess set, I knew he wouldn't take most of his other belongings, and I thought it would be a nice housewarming present, to eBay him a copy of the Nintendo 64 with this game, with 2 controllers, of course. Now, I mentioned earlier that it cost me $15 to purchase my copy, and this was only a few years ago. But the market's changed. So what was at the time a purchase by a nerd for us to do nerdy things together, was now a purchase on a market populated by people like me, ironically and nostalgically consuming these old video games in a way that really drives up the price. So yes, it's insane, but I actually spent $150 on a copy of a 13-year-old video game that barely functions to begin with. But it's also a $150 promise, and that promise, much like everything else in our relationship, which goes unspoken and is a pretext to everything else, is now that system is sitting there somewhere in this apartment in BC, he knows that I'm going to come there, and he knows that when I do, we'll be able to pick up where we left off.